Hang on, let me get rid of this. And this.
Down the road. Thank you, Tekken, for that. My name's Dave. This is Scott. Scott's
Good
here more
morning.
often than I am.
Yeah, you've been gallivanting around the world.
I've been in America for the last 5 weeks, yes.
Yeah, well done.
Yes.
Give us the highlights.
It's a... I don't know if I can say it on a live stream. No, I can't, honestly. It's got some issues that it needs to sort out. Let's put it this way. So, yeah.
Say no more.
Yeah,
all right, come and talk to
no more.
Dave after the event. Yeah. Get the lowdown.
Yeah. It was an interesting time to be there with the debate and the assassination attempt.
Yeah, that would have been exciting.
Yes, interesting.
Okay, well, if you haven't been to Morning Startup before, who hasn't been to Morning Startup before? Welcome. We run this every 2 weeks, rain, hail or shine, talk about startup stuff. So today we've got a cool talk on advisory boards, which is very relevant for most of us here, especially those in the scale-up space or wherever it may be. And yeah, we're both startup founders ourselves, so this is run by founders, for founders, and the first thing we like to do is get to know you guys. Now, I'm going to roam around with the microphone if you want to stand up and give you a 30-second pitch about what you're doing, your shameless plug, but one of our microphones is not going through the PA, so it's only for the live stream, so don't get confused when it doesn't go through the PA. All right, everyone cool with that?
Just talk loudly. So we know who the new people are here. And it's always good to stand up, introduce yourself, get your little pitch across if you're working on something, what brought you here as well. And then if you've got an ask, always have the ask, like how can someone help you today? And that's often what the community's about, is just having that ask, because we see it all the time. That person can help that person. They get together as a coffee afterwards and hey, presto, gorgeous little startups are potentially born or a problem is solved.
Exactly.
So,
yeah. The surface area of serendipity. That's nice. Yeah. Hey, so I've actually got one. Do you want to go first?
Yeah, let's go first.
We've got a pre-prepared shameless plug.
We got the ads ready. All right, everyone. Okay, with the mic. Sorry about that. All right. Yes. So me, Damien, and one person who's getting coffee, very needed coffee. We're from INSEAD. It's a business school in France and Singapore, and we're here in collaboration with Jetsy. We're doing a summer internship or winter internship, as you might say, here with them. And our plan is just to talk to as many people as possible in the innovation ecosystem, startups, VCs, accelerators, you name it. And we just want to assess what's going on, what's going well, what could be going better. This is a chance for, I guess, everyone to really tell us what Jetsy could be doing to encourage more innovation, and it's a chance for us to learn about what makes innovation happen. And as a part of that, we have a QR code up there. We want to really aggregate a lot of insights, and we created a 1 to 2 minute survey that will just help us level up the insights when we go to report back to Jetsy at the end of August. So we'd really appreciate it if you could fill it out. We have a couple of these that we will physically hand out later, but we'd appreciate it if you could just scan the QR code, and when you get 1 to 2 minutes, just fill that out for us. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you very much. We'll try and pop that up at the end of the event as well, so people can scan it.
if you are shy, we won't pick on you. If you do want to pitch or introduce yourself, you can do. Is everybody else? You do?
Awesome.
Excellent.
Hi, I'm Christina Marion. I recently moved here from the States. It is true we do have a lot of issues. And I recently moved here, and I'm looking to get my foot into the marketing industry, so if anyone's hiring, just let me know.
So in the marketing industry?
Yes.
Anywhere, any specific area?
Digital, e-commerce, you name it.
Okay.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Definitely help.
I actually am hiring in the marketing area at the moment. Let's have a chat.
Anybody else?
Thanks. Mick McKay. I'm actually not a founder, but plan to be soon. 20 years corporate resource industry, 10 years as an executive in that space. decided to take a different path, so I'm out of that corporate world as of this month, and I'm actually part of the Perth Angels group and the deal flow chair there. So that's not why I'm here today, but if you are a startup looking for funding, come speak to us later. We can help with that too, potentially. But about to start some stuff myself. So yeah, trying to learn a bit more about what you founders are going through. So.
Fantastic. Cool. Who's looking for funding? Who's a startup looking for funding? No one? Cool.
You always got to be a founder, you know. You've got electricians next door putting in new data points. And can't make a decision, right. So... Anybody else?
Any other shameless plugs? Matt?
Use that.
Yeah, I'll give you the amplified one.
All right. Hi, guys. You can see my beautiful face over there, so no need for a QR code because it's right there. But my name's Matt from TechOn. Two things. One, we're working on a CTO school. You may or may not have seen my post recently, looking for sponsors, mentors, and of course people who want to participate and actually become tech co-founders or potential CTOs. So speaking of innovation and building more innovation in Perth, that's one of the objectives. The other thing is Free of Founders is on tomorrow in Fremantle from 5 p.m. I forget where it is this time, but just check the meetup. If you need the meetup link or want to find out more details, come and speak to me after this as well.
So can you just tell us the CTO thing? What is that about?
Yep.
Or, yeah.
Sure, sorry. Okay, so one of the biggest problems we see is not enough tech co-founders or tech-capable people in the ecosystem. We think there should be more. And so the purpose of the school is to train people who are already doing that role, potentially who maybe are software devs or have some kind of technical capability and want to become tech co-founders, potentially offering a different career path for some people, but ultimately just build more innovative, capable startups in the Perth ecosystem.
Great idea.
Yep. So come and speak to me after this if that's something that interests you.
Fantastic. Thanks, Matt. Cheers. Any other shameless plugs, announcements? Yes, one down here.
Hi, myself Ashwani Sharma. I've just completed my master's in data science from UWA. And before that, I used to work as a full stack developer, especially in field of SAP and machine learning for 3 years. And I'm just looking for some work opportunity to just use my skills in the Western Australia now. Thank you.
Welcome. Awesome. I'm sure you'll get snapped up quickly.
He's looking for a data science. Let's go.
Hi, I'm Kate. I'm from Core Innovation Hub. We're based down at one of the other SpaceCube spaces, which is Flux, just at 191 St George's Terrace. We're an ecosystem and space for startups, specifically in the resources and energy sector. So if you know anyone that's working in that space, get them to have a look at Core or hit me up after this. Our next big event is the Pilbara Innovation Exchange, which will be held at Bentley Tech Park on the 13th of September. So if you're interested in coming along and being part of that, you can buy a ticket online. If you know any founders that are living and working in the Pilbara region, then let them know it's free to exhibit and they can apply online as well on our website.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
Good benefit.
Yeah. Shameless plugs, announcements, anyone?
Yeah, Patrick, welcome.
Let's do it.
Thank this gentleman here for the coffees.
Two gentlemen, thank you very much.
Hi everyone.
Bear Grylls, yeah.
That's a bit louder than expected. Hi everyone, I'm Bhavish. I'm the founder of 3D Measure Me, which is an app that helps you track changes in your body shape and body measurements using your phone. It's really simple. With the app, you just upload 4 photos, your height and weight, and a minute later we give you a 3D avatar and over 70 body measurements. We just launched our open beta recently, and we're looking for any introductions to people in the health and fitness industry who can help us expand the open beta. So personal trainers, gyms, anything of that sort, dietitians, nutritionists, anything like that. Thank you.
Fantastic, well done. So what was it called again?
3D Measure Me.
3D Measure Me. Great.
Cool. Yeah, I do have a couple of questions, but I'll take them offline. Some of them are not
Particular
appropriate.
body parts.
Yeah. Yeah. I did think that when I first said it. Yeah. Okay.
Any others before we move on? All right. Nope. Let's get moving. So we've got a few other things to get through before the speaker. Founder Sundowner, it's the first Wednesday of every month at Nowhere Man Brewery, soon to be called the Other Side of Nowhere since their acquisition from Other Side. So it's a casual pizza and drinks event. Come along. And we are live streaming this thanks to the amazing folks at Jitsi.
Yes, they got some great initiatives. Obviously, you've got the WA Innovator of the Year, all the way through to the Waves program, the Extend, and there are lots of grants. As a startup or a scale-up, there are lots of initiatives going out through the year, and there's new ones coming out. I think there's another one about to be launched in the next couple of months. So definitely go and check out wa.gov.au/NIF to see what is available and how you can get grants. Because I think in the last grant, there were a lot of startups that got fundings from anything. I think it was like 20 grand up to 100 grand in some instances. So really good initiative there. And if you haven't checked it out, check out wadealroom.co. You'll probably find, if you are a startup in the ecosystem or scale up, you'll be on there whether you like it or not. So go and fill in the details and maybe give them a bit more information.
Absolutely. Yeah, chuck your information on Deal Room. Cool. And unfortunately, Charlie Gunningham is leaving Jitsi at the 1st of August. He's retiring, so congrats.
Is that public knowledge?
Yeah.
It is, right. Yeah. Yes, he will be missed.
Yeah, but he'll still be around, so I hear. Yeah. See his next chapter. All right, cool. Perthvideo.com.au. I need to put this on /Morning Startup Perth with hyphens. That's where you can go to check out the live stream, and they can live stream your gig if you've got one coming up. Hit them up.
You need a QR code, actually.
That's probably a good idea. QR codes for this sort of thing. Ammo Marketing. There's Jack from Ammo. They've been helping us out for a long time now. They are an awesome marketing company if you need to step on the accelerator and accelerate your business. They've also got a really cool podcast called Weird Growth with startup founders and startup folks, so make sure you subscribe to that.
If you haven't checked out Peachum Group, Glenn, gorgeous Glenn in the back there, check them out, IT recruitment specialist. If you are looking for your next job or you are looking to recruit, check out Glenn.
And Keep Space. We've got some food at the back, and that's thanks to them. They're in the e-commerce game. If you're in the e-commerce game and need to ship goods around the place, they've got a warehouse here in Perth and a warehouse in Melbourne, can help you out with that. So thanks to Jesse and the folks at Keep Space and the fine folks at Tech On. We've got Bear Grylls here, and we got Matt. They have an awesome development team over in Nepal, but it's all managed here from Perth. So if you need really good, cost-effective developers to get your startup underway, check out Tech On. And thanks for the coffees.
You know it comes from a place of love, Patrick. Space Cubes. Scott and I do this for the love. We don't get paid for it. None of a Morning Startup gets paid, but we do pay for stuff through the supporters like TechOn and that, who give you the coffees and the lunch and that. And Space Cube give us the space for free. So if you are looking for a co-working space, check out Riff. They've got Fern, they've got Flux, they've got the Western Sydney Startup Hub over in Parramatta. That's where my office is currently until we move out in a couple of weeks. Yeah. But they're a great place. If you are looking to make that move east, they've now got that hub as well to kind of give you a footprint in the East Coast to launch your business. Who's subscribed to Startup News? If you're not, go and subscribe. Every Friday in your inbox, a golden little piece of nugget of information around what's happening, movers and the shakers in the startup ecosystem. Startup WA, advocates for all things startup to the government, and they're doing some great things at the moment. If you haven't, just go and Google
all
them.
That stuff in the New Industries Fund is pretty much thanks to the Startup WA folks getting that underway. And
last but not least, we've got Plus8. If you've got a startup idea and you want to accelerate it quickly, check out Plus8. They are an accelerator. They've got different variants of the accelerator. The big main accelerator will probably, it's in the process at the moment, and they're going through the cohort now. I don't know who's going to make the cut in the draft, but there's like 100 grand's worth of funding there. But check out Plus8. It's a good initiative.
Awesome. If you want to do a talk one day, we'd love to hear from you. Morning Startup and all the things, please get in touch. And in 2 weeks' time, we have Peter from U Group. She's going to be talking about the wonderful world of data privacy. So if you've got your startup, you've got to think about where you're putting data. If you've got customers in Europe and the US and all that sort of stuff, you need to think pretty hard about this and get some decisions right at the start. So she's U Group, if you don't know, they handle a lot of customer data and they have to get this stuff right. So she knows her shit. And so come along and hear about how she simplifies all of this stuff down for startups. She's got a good process around it. So it should be a fun one.
Brilliant.
That's our formalities out the way. Boom. All right.
I think we have customer tested this one for many months now, and I think the feedback's in.
Yes, I love it. I still like it. It's staying in there. Sorry, everyone. All right, but that's probably it from us. We need to get on to this amazing talk from Craig Hook. He's a strategic advisor on a whole bunch of boards. He's been doing this for a while. And if you've got a startup and you need strategic advice from other people, you can get people on your board and how do you remunerate them, all of that sort of stuff. Craig's going to take us all through it. So please make him welcome Craig Hook.
Thank you, Scott. You just get me going. See a few faces from last night, so thank you those who are backing up to this morning. I do know somebody who was threatening to send their husband along this morning because they were going to have a sleep in, but I suspect that person lost. All right. Also great to see a whole group of folks in today, some startups, some more mature businesses, a couple of folks hiding up the back there, and hoping this morning to really get some enthusiasm around and push the idea, if you don't know the idea about advisory boards, how great they are. And it doesn't matter what size business you have, there's an advisory board for you. And one of those reasons is that I think actually the old governance system and what we think of a board of directors is pretty old and probably a bit broke. Generally, when you think about a board, you're probably visualising somebody like me. Pale, male, stale, middle-aged, probably called John, and very dictatorial, and it's my way or the highway. And I'm telling you, a lot of governance boards really haven't moved past that. But there's a lot of pressures and a lot of reasons why we do need to move past that. If for no other reason, to get a little bit of diversity into our organisations. And I'm not just talking about gender diversity, but diversity of thought, having different opinions. And, you know, what's a great model or a way that we can get in people with different ideas and different views and challenge you, particularly as a founder or a starter, to think about things differently, but in a respectful way, and also in a way that you're still running your business and keeping control. So hopefully this morning I can convince you that advisory board's a great idea. Well, let's get started. Okay, keeping everyone happy. Not easy. All right, so if you're thinking about yourself, yep, I want to make sure that I can eat and one day I'm going to generate some revenue. Perhaps you've got family and friends that have invested in your business. You know, what's your sister saying to you? I hope that flaky brother of mine is going to make it one day and I'll get my money back. Maybe you've got some VCs interested in your business or in your business. You know, 15% of your business and I want 2 seats on your governance board. Well, hang on a minute. It's just me at the moment. So what happens if I bring those 2 VC people onto my governance board? Is there a risk involved in that? Yes, there is the short answer. Your accountant, you know, is probably a typical trusted advisor that most businesses will have. At some point, you've been chatting to your accountant about, you know, here's my dreams, this is what I want to be doing. And your accountant's probably thinking, you know, I wonder if she really has the right market that she should be looking at her project. So there's lots of folks, I'm sure, that are working around with you, and some of them you probably consider advisors, even if they're just casual advisors. But, you know, is there a better way, a more structured way of involving them and getting them to help your business? Okay, so let's start. So who has family and friends as advisors? You go and chat to them. Yep. Okay. Who goes to networking groups? Local business chambers? Yep. Okay. Accountant? Do you talk to your accountant at all? Anybody spoken to a lawyer? Maybe an IP lawyer? Yep. All of the above. So that's typically where we start, quite informal. But as your business starts growing and you want to start working more on the business than in the business, and you need to start attracting more investors, or, you know, perhaps you know, some markets you thought you were going to tackle, you're not quite sure that you have the intel on, you're probably going to want to start being a little bit more structured, a little bit more formalised. So that's kind of the top right there. So you're either going to be boosting up your existing governance board, and by the way, who's a single founder and owner of their business here? You are a board of one, so you're a governance board. So there are a lot of fiduciary obligations you have. So when I'm talking about a board, even if it's just you, that's you, you're the board. So you're either going to formalise your governance board or your advisory board. And people say to me, well, what's the difference? There's only one very simple difference between a governance board and an advisory board. A governance board, which if you're a sole director of your company, is you make decisions. So you have, under the Corporations Act, a duty to make decisions on behalf of all your shareholders. An advisory board, on the other hand, just makes recommendations. That's it, full stop. That's the only difference between a governance board and an advisory board. So just like you would expect a director of a company to be experienced, to be an expert, to be independent, to kick doors open for you, that's the exact same thing you would expect from advisors. They'll do exactly all of those things for you, but with one very important difference: they don't make decisions. You still do. You retain that decision-making ability. So you can see it's quite flexible. Yep, we can get advisors in and out, choose who we need, very fit for purpose. All right, so what might prompt me to create a board? Well, there's a whole bunch of reasons that you may want to do that. It could be about protecting some IP or an IP strategy. Okay, so you've developed something, you're wondering whether you should patent it, what else might I want to do with that? So that might be a good reason to get a good advisor in to help with that. Might be an investor requirement, okay, and often that can come through grants. There are plenty of examples in the past where a startup's applied for a grant, at the last minute before the cheque's written is, who's your governance board? Who are your directors? Oh, quickly, I'll just grab some family and friends on, throw them on the board, not a problem. A couple of months later, all those family and friends go, hey, you should be going right, not left. And now you've created a whole risk for you in terms of losing control of your business. So be very careful about that. Could be a regulatory requirement. That could either be, there is a regulatory requirement for you to start adding to your governance board or having an advisory board, or it might be just the industry you're in. If you're in finance, your fintech, pharmacy, medical, I definitely would urge you to have an advisory board because it's a very complex regulatory environment. And that's a great way to have an advisory board to make sure you don't do the wrong thing or get tripped up. Role responsibilities blurred. What I mean by that is I made a little comment earlier about, are you ready to start working on instead of in the business? As you're growing and putting people on, are those lines getting blurred? And look, I get it. When you're a startup, you're the C everything. You're the CEO, the CIO, you're hiring people. I get all that. But at some point, you're going to be adding people in. So maybe you need to take a step back, perhaps create an advisory board around you to keep you focused on those key strategic opportunities or gaps in your business. Okie dokies. And as I said, last key thing for me and where I can really make a difference for you and the work that I do is when that little light bulb goes off and you go, I need to be working on my business, not in my business. Okay? So the biggest power of an advisory board is about getting your strategy to where it needs to be. Yep, it's an advisory board is really there to help you get out of the day-to-day weeds and be focused on your growth strategy and where you're heading to. Okie dokes. All right, so advisory boards, what are they? As I mentioned before, you want independent expert people on them. They should be problem solving. It should be challenging in a safe environment. Should be kicking doors open. And I guess probably one of the main reasons that people think about an advisory board, if it's not for some of those regulatory reasons, is really about market intelligence. It's about the market I think I'm going to be working in, or maybe there's some newer markets I haven't thought about and I just simply don't know enough about those markets. If that's the number one use that I see people go, hey, I need an advisor on an advisory board. It's about that sort of thing. Okay? All right, so different types of advisory boards. Well, it's almost a little bit of how long's a piece of string. I'm going to move because I'm sick of standing on that side, just to give the camera guy something to do. You can have all sorts of advisory boards, okay? You can have a sole person, an advisor of one. And often that's where people start, okay? They sit there and go, yep, I've got some IP here, I don't know about my strategy. So maybe it's just an IP advisor, or maybe it's about a certain market they want some intel for. You can have what I call a pop-up advisory board, okay? So you may have a particular challenge or opportunity, and you say, gee, wouldn't it be good if I could get 3 or 4 smart heads in the room for half a day to help me work through this, okay? Either help me problem solve or help me look for some opportunities. You get them together, they work through with you in a structured way, as a board would. What are we going to talk about? Do we have the right people there? What are the outcomes that I'm looking for? Okay, so just as you imagine a pop-up cafe or something like that, it's exactly the same idea. Absolutely fantastic, for startups and scale-ups. So again, I would suggest if you have a couple of advisors that you're working with on an informal basis, just get them together, okay? Go talk to Matt at TechOn and provide the coffees, whatever you got to do, just get them together in a room and get them in a structured way to help solve a problem for you. Absolutely fantastic way. Then there's all the way through to project advisory boards or, an advisory board that sits with your business for several years, okay? And they're a more structured and formalised advisory board. Okay, I'm just going to talk about 3 of them. One which is kind of almost sort of your de facto governance board. So when you're not ready to expand your governance board, I'd recommend putting an advisory board around as a first step. Second one I want to talk about is project advisory boards, which is really focusing on something specific, okay? Again, market expansion, merger and acquisition opportunity, maybe I need to get ready for funding, something like that. And then the third one I'll just touch on, which I call a corporatised advisory board. So even if you're sitting here this morning going, I've already got a governance board, we work well, we know what we're doing, think about how you might leverage an advisory board working alongside your corporatised advisory board. And there can be lots of good reasons for that. So for example, if you think about all the things that a board should be thinking about today, AI, data privacy, equal opportunity. I mean, if you had an expert on each one of those areas on your board, you'd have about 10 people on your board. Probably don't need to do that, but you can leverage an advisory board to help supplement some of that thinking. Okay, so if we think about, typically for startups, there's maybe yourself, maybe you have another co-founder, but you now want to get some people around you in an advisory board. So what might be some of the reasons you'll be thinking about it? So the top left could be, maybe I need some networks. Maybe I need to improve my financial literacy. Do I understand how to go about funding? Do I understand what a balance sheet is? Profit and loss, it could be things like that. So they're typically going to be gaps in your thinking or your knowledge. So that's a great place to start to get some advisors around you to help you work through that. And let's face it, most of us probably have an accountant or a financial advisor and have probably dealt with at least a lawyer at one stage, if nothing else, to get your ABN, your constitution, your shareholder agreement together. So if nothing else, let's get a couple of those folks in the room with some other people. All right? Things you need to be careful of. They should be expert and experienced in the area that you're looking for. Are they an investor in my business? Do I need to manage any potential conflicts of interest? Am I going to pay them? If I'm not going to pay them in cash, how am I going to remunerate them? What are some of those expectations? Okay, so there's some of the things that you need to manage, and that's why you look to people like myself or the Advisory Board Centre, which can give you a bit of structure around that. And I'll talk a little bit about some of that structure in a minute. Okay, so that's the most common starting point. How many people on an advisory board? It's a little bit of how long's a piece of string, but I do suggest that if there's 2 of you as founders, I probably wouldn't have more than 2 or 3 advisors on your advisory board when you sit in your meetings, just to get that sort of balance right. There's nothing more daunting as a founder or a business owner to have 7 advisors looking at you across the room. It can be a little bit daunting, so try and balance that up. Okay, project advisory board, probably the most, I guess, popular structure. These are really fit for purpose. So advisory boards, particularly around a project advisory board, is finding the right people who you need. What's the length of time that I'm going to engage the advisory board? And typically a project advisory board will be about 3 to 18 months because you're trying to deal with either specific opportunity or specific problem. Okay, and you'll be meeting as often as you need to. Okay, so if it's if there's a real crisis sort of on the horizon, you might be meeting every couple of weeks. If it's a longer term project, maybe you're only going to meet every 2 or 3 months. All right, but it'll be a very clear scope about what we're talking about, what are the specific problems and things on the agenda, who are the right people that we need, giving me the right advice. And you might be swapping some people in and out. Okay, so you can see, very flexible. Imagine now, those of you who've gone through the process of setting up your company and appointing a director on your governance board is a very different kettle of fish. Okay, you don't swap them in and out, higgledy-piggledy. And particularly if you have directors on your governance board that are also shareholders, very hard to move them off and on. Okay, so again, this is one of the things I'm trying to highlight about leveraging an advisory board is you just don't have all those hassles that you have with a governance board, but you have all the advantages and all the things you would expect for someone at a director level. Okay. Then the last one, just want to talk about corporatised advisory boards. And again, it was very interesting, the next speaker talking about customer data privacy, because there are a lot of things that are now impacting current boards that they're really struggling with. If you've been watching any of the Royal Commissions the last couple of years, about a Royal Commission on Finance, Disability and Aged Care, the number one thing that the Commissioner has said at the end of it is the Board of Directors need to set the tone for the culture, leadership and strategy of the business. So they're absolutely pointing the finger at boards and saying, we think a lot of the issues in these sectors are because you as a board have not stepped up. Okay? And some of the recommendations out of that, particularly for aged care and disability care, is to create consumer forum groups, which are effectively an advisory board. So those good businesses will actually be setting up those feedback mechanisms for their consumers or their customers as an advisory board. Those of it that just set up a little subcommittee and do, I'm going to use the word greenwashing, it's not greenwashing, maybe in aged care it's grey washing, that just won't cut, right? Having a structured advisory board and getting in your customers and key external stakeholders and getting that feedback, those businesses that do that will do very well. Okay, sort of boards through as you're growing. So if you're in the very early stages, you're not quite sure what your MVP is. If you're at a very early stage, I would probably be suggesting that if you have an advisor and want to formalise it, probably formalising that mentoring structure. I mean, it's probably you. When you're in kind of that scale-up mode, so you pretty much nailed down your product or service, you're starting to get out there and starting to do things, that's when I would certainly recommend starting to think about an advisory board alongside your governance structure. You may require to start building your governance board. There may be reasons to do that for investors, other reasons, I get that. But I would certainly be encouraging you to be putting an advisory board together because there's probably also a good chance that you can road test potential directors for your governance board through an advisory board. Test them out. Is this person a good fit for me? Have they got the expertise and the experience that I need? Okay, when you're in a rapid growth phase, again, I would encourage you to think about project advisory boards. New market, I'll quickly put one together for 6 months, looking for some acquisition opportunities. Maybe I'm looking at a transition. Okay, do I have a transition plan? If somebody comes up to write me that big $10 million cheque, am I going to take it or not? Okay, so think about maybe an advisory board to help you through that transition planning. And, and when you're kicking goals, maybe in a few years' time and absolutely killing it out there, again, you may have a more formalised board structure, but think about an advisory board working alongside that. Okay, it's going to be a little bit of boring stuff. I'm going to whip through this boring stuff, but, happy to slow down and take questions about it. Does everybody in the room have an Australian business number? Yes. Is anybody in the room that doesn't? Okay, I have come across some people that don't. If you don't have that, you cannot claim R&D, for example, and the customers you're dealing with will have difficulty on that and forget trying to access any grants. So excellent, everybody's an ABN. Okay, company constitution, take it everybody has one of those. When you set up your company, I'm sure you had a template on that. Shareholder agreement, interesting one. I still come across businesses, 70, 80, $100 million turnover that do not have a shareholder agreement. Hey, I've worked with Kate for 20 years. We get on well, we know each other. Oh, really? Okay. What happens if Kate passes away or divorces her current partner? What's going to happen with the shareholding, particularly around that? So there are a lot of risks. But one thing I encourage you to do if you have a shareholder agreement is please, it is a live document. Just as your business is growing, so should the shareholder agreement as you bring more people into the business, and particularly for key staff. If you have key staff in your business that you decide to either give some equity to or let them buy into your business, you need to be very clear to them in your shareholder agreement the conditions they can buy equity and the conditions that they can exit out. There is nothing worse than a key staff person exiting your business, taking your IP and taking other key things with them. Okay? Your shareholder agreement is one of those ways that you can try and protect yourself with that. So please, if you haven't looked at your shareholder agreement lately and you're thinking of adding new shareholders or key staff in your business, please revisit that. Okay. Structure, ownership structure and corporate structure. Again, I'm not going to get into a lot of detail about this, but just a couple of hints. If you have a financial advisor that's telling you, hey, great idea, build a whole lot of trusts. Okay, you have one trust for your assets, one trust for pay your employees, another trust to put your IP in, because it's a great way of protecting you and you won't lose your house. Yeah, I kind of get that. But I'll tell you what, when you look for investors, they're going to run a mile. Investors do not like complex corporate and ownership structures. Okay, so if you think it was a great idea to set up all those trusts, I'd say get rid of them. Make it very simple and easy for investors coming into your business. That things are simple. Likewise, director loans, IP sitting in all sorts of weird places. Just make it clean is my suggestion for that. Okay, a board charter. So whether we are talking about an advisory board or your governance board, that's another pretty basic document that you need. Okay, so when we're setting up, whether we're setting up an advisory board or we're setting up a governance board, be very clear. What's the board there for? What are the people that I expect to have onto the board? What will they be looking at? What won't they be looking at? Now, for a governance board, which is kind of, pretty static, that's fairly straightforward, but very important for when you set up your advisory board. Because when you put your advisory board together, you want the advisors to be very clear why they're there, what they're going to be looking at, how often they're going to meet, what the expectations are. If you don't get on with them, how quickly you can move them on. If they don't really like what you're doing, they also may want to move on. And believe me, good advisors will be exiting your advisory board before you can push them out. Because advisors are there, they want to see you succeed. So if you're very clear why you want them there, how often you're going to meet, what you're going to talk about, and that you will take on board their recommendations, they'll stay with you. But if you kind of go, yeah, I know that idea we spoke about 2 months ago, but no, I really haven't done anything about that, the advisor's going to say, well, why am I here? You're kind of not really serious. Okay, so very important to get that charter right. Okay, where do we find advisors or where do we find directors? Have a look around here. Some good folks here. look at the various different groups: Advisory Board Centre, Family Business Association, the Australian Company Directors, the Governance Institute, your industry associations, different networking groups. Come to people like myself. As an advisory board chair, that's kind of what I do. I set up advisory boards and I chair advisory boards. Sometimes when I'm working with clients, we don't end up putting an advisory board together, but we go through the process and we go through the steps. So I have a lot of contacts, and yourselves, you have contacts as well. Think about your early stage investors. Think about families and friends. Who do they know out there that might be able to help you? Okay. I like to put out an expression of interest. So yes, I know a lot of boards that are put together as kind of somebody who knows somebody. Yeah, I get that. But I still think it's important that you think about, what is that key strategic gap in my business that I need some help with? Okay, so it is, how do I set up in the US? Am I going to have a partnership, a distributorship? Am I going to set up my own outpost out there? Okay, if I'm going to have somebody looking or thinking about that, then have a very clear expression of interest of the sort of person that you're looking for, so that you've got that expertise, you've got that experience, and they're really going to help for you. And in terms of that experience, I like to mix it up a bit too. Okay, so you may have an expert that knows how to set up a manufacturing operation in the Midwest of the US, but what sort of experience background will be helpful? A founder that's been there, done that. Okay, they'll bring a perspective of, as a founder, what were some of the challenges I had. Perhaps a senior manager with a customer or supplier. Okay, they'll bring in that customer or supplier perspective, but also that corporate perspective of, here are how things work in the big corporate world for a potential customer. So think about that experience lens as well. It's just not, I found an advisor that's an expert in something particular. Think about that background. So again, when I'm putting an advisory board together, particularly if I'm looking for 2 or 3 advisors, I'm looking for that mix. Okay, I don't want everybody from the same sort of experience level. All right, assessment, I think I've been through that. Conflicts of interest, that's probably an easy one. All right, onboarding, very important. So again, I guess some of you are probably sitting back and thinking, yeah, look, Craig, effectively I do have an advisory board. I've got a couple of advisors, we meet over beers or a wine every now and then. I really would encourage you to put a bit of structure around it. As I said, a board charter, a scope for what your advisors need to be doing, and you onboard them, okay? So when I create and put an advisory board together, there's an onboarding process, which consists of, where's the company strategy, what are some of their financials, what are some of the things they've done, what are some of the initial particular issues that we're going to be looking at. And very much that chair will set the tone. Okay, so when I started the talk, I had a little bit of a joke about pale, male and stale, the old, typical chair of a governance board. Well, it's the same thing with an advisory board. You need to have a good chair that's going to set the right tone. And what I tend to do between advisory board meetings is work as a mentoring capacity with the CEO or the business owner. Okay, remember the last meeting we had? Have you tried that idea yet? What's getting in the way? How can I help you? Can any of the advisors help you get through that? Okay. So talking about that, because I haven't really, spoken about cadence or perhaps talking about remuneration. That's kind of one of those $64 million questions that people put out to me. Again, the cadence of an advisory board is really going to be around what you're working on. Okay, so if you decide to set up an advisory board to help you work through your strategy, that's probably going to be a 2 to 3 year time frame. Okay, and because the advisory board's going to be helping you either with that key strategic opportunity or key strategic gap in your business, the cadence is probably going to be something like quarterly. Okay, so why are we only meeting every quarter for maybe half a day? Well, I've found that business owners and CEOs need about 3 months to try something different. Anything longer, and they're probably going to forget about it, and everybody will get frustrated at the next board meeting. If it's a bit shorter than that, it's just too short. Okay, you're trying to run a business. Let's face it, you're trying to run a business. you're trying to sort your MVP out, you're trying to attract new customers, there's a lot of stuff going on. You need to work out how much time am I spending in the business, the stuff I've got to be doing, how much time do I need to be working on the business. Okay, so getting that cadence right is very, very important. If you've got a project advisory board and perhaps you're looking at an acquisition opportunity or a transition exit or looking at a new market, you're probably going to meet a little bit more often, okay, because it's something you really want to nail in the next 3 to 18 months. So maybe the advisory boards are down to monthly, you know, it might be every fortnight, there might be what you need, okay? So again, very flexible, but set that expectation up front, all right? In terms of, as I said, again, putting people off and on an advisory board, you know, generally most of the contracts I see is a couple of weeks' notice either side, okay? And that's a pretty clear expectation. Hey, you know, if I'm too busy or the advice that I'm giving is not really suited, you know, it's probably time for me to exit or if things aren't working out, okay? And again, as an advisory board chair, that's one of the important dynamics that I'm looking for, okay? And managing potential conflicts of interest. One of the classic ways a conflict of interest will come up is, you know, I've got, I'm going to pick on Kate because she's in front of me. Kate's our digital marketing strategy advisor, okay? The business owner comes up and goes, I really like what Kate's saying. Can Kate help my marketing manager put a plan together? I'm going to go, look, probably not. And I'll say to Kate, have you got a colleague that you can suggest? Business owner comes back and says, no, really love Kate, I really like her to work on it. So the next thing I'll do is I'll say to Kate, have you got a staff member in your business that can help out? Business owner still comes back and goes, Craig, you're not listening to what I'm saying. I really love Kate, I really want Kate to help out. Okay, not a problem. We will set up a separate contract for Kate in that consulting assignment versus her role on the advisory board. So it's very clear that Kate knows to put her hat on when she's an advisor, or she puts her marketing consulting hat on when she's doing that. The other reason that's really important is for Kate, because if something goes wrong in the business, or there's a challenge in the business that perhaps a shareholder's not happy the direction the business is going or something else like that, is that if push comes to shove and we start getting into a bit of a legal quagmire, is that Kate could be viewed as a shadow director. Okay, so even though I said advisory boards have no fiduciary obligations under the Corporations Act, if an advisor starts acting like a director making decisions or starts acting like an employee working on things, they can be viewed as a shadow director. Okay, and that can have some pretty dire consequences if the business is getting into trouble. So all I do is suggest we put some mechanisms in place to manage that. All right, last question. I'm looking at Scott, he's not giving me the wind-ups, this is good. That Dave is. Key thing I guess about is remuneration, okay? And that's a little bit of how long's a piece of string. First thing I say is you get what you pay for, okay? So when we're talking about an advisory board, we are talking about people that are experts and experienced in their area, and they are going to make a difference to your business. You're here, you want to get to there, you need that sort of level of input and thinking. So when I think about an advisor, I'm thinking about people that would typically, in their day job, whether they're an advisor, consultant, working in an executive role, we are talking $2,500 to $6,000 a day people, okay? These are very smart people, know what they're doing, they're busy, okay? So the first thing I want to get into your mind is this is the sort of people that we're talking about, okay? So now there becomes the question of going, oh my goodness, all right, well if I had, you know, $3,000, $4,000 a day advisors and we're meeting 4 times a year, do all the math on that, maybe that's a $45,000, $50,000 investment a year, okay? Now, for an ongoing business, that really shouldn't be a hassle and that shouldn't be something that they're really stressing about. If they are, I'm probably going to suggest an advisory board's not for them and they've got the wrong focus. But if you're in startup world, that can be a bit of a challenge, right? $50,000, what can I do with that? Oh, I can employ another manager, that's half a marketing plan, that's kind of the way you're thinking, and I get that. But believe it or not, a lot of people say, well, I guess I give them some equity. I mean, the reality is almost 3/4 of advisory boards are paid. It's less than a quarter that are done pro bono. A quarter on pro bono, and then it's only a couple of percent that are actually paid in equity. Okay, so don't be sort of bludgeoned or convinced. Advisors around you sit there and go, yeah, I'd love to work with you, love to formalise it, let's have some sort of equity deal. That's how it's going to work. The reality is that is not all that common. If you're sitting in Silicon Valley, probably about 10 years ago, very common. Okay, they have a very, a very structured way of doing that. Okay, but it is an option. Okay, so if you're thinking about with your advisors and you would like to remunerate them and you are thinking about some sort of equity interest, there are some standard documents and templates to do that. Okay, an acronym's called a FAST. Just look it up. There's plenty of templates out there. But be very careful about that. There should be very clear triggers, very clear, when that equity will play, when it will max out, what happens if your business sells, etc., etc. So I won't go into all the ins and outs of that. You can come and have a chat to me afterwards about that. But I would strongly urge, particularly when you're in the very early stages, of get those good advisors around you. If they really love what you're doing, they'll probably do it pro bono. If you're getting to that stage and you think there's going to be a pretty quick uptake, your business is going to take off, you can see some reasonable links between offering some equity. Have a think about that. But generally I'd be going for cash. And there are some grants around that will help you do that. Okay, so various grants that are going around both at a state government level and a federal level, often one of the things that they will be happy to spend that grant money is around an advisory board. Okay, so if you kind of do the math and think, yeah, I'll be probably spending about 30 grand on advisors, if a state government innovation booster grant or a federal grant can sort of pay half of that, I'd certainly suggest looking at it, a worthwhile investment. Okie dokes, just about at the end. I belong to a group called the Advisory Board Centre. We're kind of that, lead advocacy group around advisory boards. I work under a best practice framework, and these are the things that I look for, and I think these are the things that you should think in the back of your mind. Okay, clear scope for your advisory board, very clear on the skills and the independence that I require from my advisors on my advisory board, that it's fit for purpose. Okay, is this a pop-up advisory board? Is this a project advisory board? What is it? Structure and discipline. So again, I've mentioned a couple of things around a board charter, very clear contracts for your advisors, having a good agenda. What are we going to talk about? We're just not getting together and randomly chatting about how the business is going. What are the things that we're going to be talking about and thinking about? And then, bottom left there about measurement. Okay, could be a bit of a tricky one, but it is something I encourage people to have a think about. All right, so when you think about boards, whether it's your governance board or your advisory board, that's working at that strategic level, kind of what's a measure of success that you put in there. Okay, it's not like sort of attaching a KPI perhaps to a developer or a BD specialist, but I would be thinking about when you go into putting an advisory board together, what's going to be some measure of success? After 6 months, can we sit back and go, hey, this was a good process? We've all been contributing, we've been challenging, we've kicked a few doors open. Okay, so this shouldn't just be, this is a feel-good exercise. I'm putting an advisory board together because it looks good. There's been plenty of spectacular failures where that's happened. If you think about Theranos, I don't know if any of you can remember that one from a few years ago. The lady in the US that thought from one prick of blood that you could sort of solve all your health problems out. She had an advisory board and some very high-profile people on it, but it really was window dressing. Okay, so I would say, what was the measure of success of that advisory board? Pretty much zero, because it wasn't set up correctly and it wasn't run properly. Okay. All right, that's about it. I'll now hand it over to Q&A. I hope that's all been helpful.
I will do the rolling mic. Do we have any questions? Jack?
Thanks, Craig. Really awesome talk. I think you broke it down really well. One of the challenges, I guess, with an advisory board, or as I see with the founders I work with, is they have all of this momentum when they start the business and starts taking off, and then they bring in an advisory board, but then they almost lose their mojo a bit and feel like they need to start doing things really differently and stuff. Part of that, I think, is preparedness, and maybe I've seen some frameworks out there like have a good, bad, ugly, and ask for the advisory board, but in terms of that preparation or like keeping the decisions and the momentum happening, how do you get that set up right between the founder and the advisory board? What's the process?
Okay, terrific question. And I guess you could sort of apply that problem to a lot of things. I think really a key role for the chair is what I'm suggesting. Have a very good advisory board chair. Okay, so often people will go into going, I've got some advisors together, I'm running the business, this should be pretty straightforward. And maybe as one of the founders you think, well, I'll kind of chair it. I would really urge you not to do that. I really urge you to have an independent, certified chair, an advisory board chair. Now, it could be one of the advisors, okay? I'm not suggesting you go out and, oh my goodness, here's another person. I've got to think about paying or getting involved. Yes, they should be, one of your advisors, but have somebody there in that chair role that can basically manage and deal with that. And that's a lot of what I do. It's herding the cats. I want to make sure my advisors are prepared before they go into an advisory board meeting. Okay, we're very clear what we're going to be talking about, just as clear on what we're not going to be talking about. Likewise to the business owners or the founders, okay, we're having another advisory board meeting coming up. Okay, what information do the advisors need? What are the key things that you need to get out of this conversation? And typically when I run an advisory board, it's kind of a half day. We want to spend a bit of time. We're getting out of the day-to-day. We're not, answering calls and all the rest of that. But making sure the founders are very clear about what they want to get out. Because ultimately, you make the decisions, okay, not the advisory board. So if you're feeling a bit of pressure, that's probably the one thing perhaps you need to push back on your advisors. Hey guys and girls, you're giving advice, you're not making decisions, I'm making decisions. But I need good advice and recommendations from you to help me critically think through this problem and come to a decision. Okay, that's what you're there for, not to make decisions. That'd be my suggestion.
Question at the back here. 2 seconds.
Advisor whiplash. What do you do when you get conflicting advice from different people? How do you get consensus among your different viewpoints?
Great question. I'd say that's actually not an issue at all. In fact, I'd encourage it. I'd be quite disappointed actually if you didn't get conflicting advice. Okay, because you actually want your advisors in there challenging and bringing different perspectives. But you're right, to your point, you don't want to be sitting there and having 4 different bits of conflicting advice and you're sitting there as a business owner going, oh my goodness, which one do I take and which one do I go? So again, I think one of those key roles of the chair to be able to bring those different perspectives together and go, are there legitimately 4 different perspectives that potentially the business owner could go down 4 different paths? Perhaps there is, try that out. Or sit back and go, okay, so the advice that's been given, is the different advice, is it different because actually there are 4 different pathways, or is it different because some of the advice might be what I need to do now versus what I need to be doing after that? So it's about, distilling that advice and going, right, actually what does it apply to? Consensus is an interesting one. Again, advisory boards are just making recommendations. So to some degree, it's not kind of sitting there like a governance board where you've kind of got to vote and go, right, we've got to make a decision. Are we all in agreement here? And consensus is a tricky one. Okay? In your traditional Western male-dominated governance board, consensus can be the chair. Okay? That's what we're going to do. Forget everybody else. Consensus might be out of a board of 5, 3 out of the 5 want to go left, the other 2 want to go right. If you're with an Indigenous group, for example, and this is a different cultural overlay, Consensus is everyone agrees. And if that takes all day to get that consensus, then that's what it is. So also be very clear on what consensus means. Okay, it can mean different things to different people.
I would just add to that as well, if you've got an advisory board of yes people, that's probably not a good place as well. So if you've got conflicting views, that's good because you're getting the debate out there. Any more questions? There's one at the front. Is it still there? No? Anyone else? Okay.
Well, maybe I'll ask a question.
Okay. Shouldn't have picked on you.
Looking at it from the other side, for people looking, say, to develop their or do professional development and prepare themselves for board positions, are there any suggestions that you would have sort of from that side in terms of like top 3 things that we should be doing in terms of framing ourselves and upskilling ourselves to make sure that we are quality people who could be considered for boards?
Sure, terrific question. Not sure if I'll pick 3, but I'll pick a couple. Look, I think the first thing is to think about the role, and hopefully I've described it reasonably well. Okay, so often one of the things that I will ask a business owner early up is, when you think of an advisor, what comes to mind? And I get all sorts of answers. My business coach. Sorry, business coach is not an advisor. They have a role as a business coach, but they're not an advisor. The private equity dudes that just bought into my business, they're advisors? No, they're not. They're investors in your business. Yes, they're there also to give you advice, but primarily they are there as an investor. So the reason I'm giving that sort of example is to make sure you're very clear, if you're positioning yourself as an advisor or director, that you're that. What's my expert area? What's my experience? And, do I think I can operate independently? And what are some of those key strategic opportunities or areas as a business is growing that I can add value? Okay, that's where you've got to position yourself as. Okay, my last, role before doing this is, I'm proud to say I'm a card-carrying management consultant. Okay, consultants are very clear. I get a scope. I perform to that scope, give a deliverable, and I get paid for it. Okay, that's what a consultant does. That's not an advisor. Okay, so if I'm going to go out talking to clients wearing my consultant hat on, I wouldn't hire me as a director or as an advisor, because I'm thinking more transactionally and I'm thinking about just getting something done to a particular scope. Okay, so I think the first thing is be very clear where you add value on key strategic opportunities or issues in a particular market area that you're really good at. Okay, because if you're going to put yourself up as a director or as an advisor, that's what you need. Work on your networks. It is a networking thing. Okay, so there are lots and lots of director and advisory roles out there, and people want them, but they're not advertised. Okay, you don't see them on Seek, you don't see them on your socials, you don't see them on LinkedIn. Very much it is a networking thing, and that's still the way things are done. And there's nothing wrong with that. Start having conversations around. So if you're thinking of getting into that advisory, let people know. Okay, if you're with the meetup group, let people know. Hey, I can be an advisor. If you're looking for an advisor in a particular area, I'd be happy to help. I might be the person for you. Okay, or through the core or other areas like that. So I definitely would be doing that. Obviously, keep yourself up to date with things, keeping current. That is one of the big challenges today, whether you're a governance board director or an advisor, an advisory board member, is remaining current and keeping up to date. In fact, that's one of the reasons that you don't see serial board members anymore. Okay, it used to be, even for an ASX 300 company, that you might spend a day a month. You get the board papers, you run through them. What are the key things we're going to be talking about at the next board meeting? Away we go. You just can't do that anymore. Okay, the risk to directors on governance board has just gone up like 100-fold. It is absolutely incredible. When I talk to governance board directors, they say, oh my goodness, the amount of effort and time I've got to put in now. And it's just not reading board papers. It's walking around. It's going and talking to employees. It's talking to suppliers. It's talking to customers. You need to know what's going on. Remember that example I gave about the Royal Commissions? First thing the Commissioners said for those 3 Royal Commissions, as a board, you ought to know what's going on. You ought to know what the culture is of your employees. And if things are going wrong, you should know about it. It's not good enough that you get a report from your CEO going, yeah, we've had a few grumbles, but yeah, don't worry about it. Okay? So, do the research as well. Is that helpful? Yep, okay, great.
Any last questions? No? Let's put our hands together. Thank you very much.
Good. Thanks, Craig. Brilliant. Hope you all got something out of that. A non-boring talk about boards. I certainly did. Thanks for that. It was awesome. Okay.
We
How do we finish this up?
are here in 2 weeks' time when we've got...
Peter from U Group, as we mentioned before, around data privacy. Who's coming along to that? Yeah, that's the spirit. Good stuff. Cool. We're going to turn this place back into a co-working space. Oh, I'll put your slide back up for the QR code for the INSEAD. Is that how I say it? INSEAD. All right.
Are you guys, are you just a little, you're connected with that VC firm over in Canada? Is that right? No? Oh, okay. Okay. I'll talk to you offline about it though, that way. Right. Thank you very much. We will be putting this place back to a co-working space. We've got this time until 9 o'clock. Help yourself to some food at the back there. Grab yourself a copy, courtesy of TechOn, food courtesy of Keep Space, and
get to know each other.
We'll get to know each other. Thank you very much. Cheers.
Thanks, everyone. Cheers.